Hello and welcome to Connect and Collaborate. I am Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and I'm very excited to have in studio with me one of my favorite guests. We have you on once a month, Anthony Lambatos. How are you doing, Anthony?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you, Alex. It's always good to be here and excited for a great show today.
Yes, absolutely. So catch up with me. Last month we missed out a little bit. We had a replay of one of my favorite episodes that we did for you. So we got a couple of months to catch up on here.
Oh yeah, it's summer is such a crazy time at Footers, as you can imagine. We're right in the thick of wedding season, which is awesome to be part of those celebrations. Definitely some emotions attached to it and can be a little bit stressful, but for the most part, we just appreciate that the people invite us to be part of such a special day. So that's great. And we got some cool stuff that we did a number of events up in Vail this year, which has been great. And coming up this weekend, we're doing the VIP catering for the Velorama cycling and Colorado Classic Cycling Fest and the music festival that goes along with it. So we'll be feeding over 5,000 people over the next 3 or 4 days, which is exciting for us and our team. And so we're gearing up for that. They're in the trenches doing the food prep and the logistics prep of how we make that happen. Back-to-back days, but it's good stuff, and everybody is cranking at Footers. So
and one of my favorite things that we always talk about is what a great team you have, right?
Oh yes,
you've got an amazing group of people that you're with. I don't know if I'm allowed to mention it, but you mentioned before we got on air there's something exciting going on. You were nominated.
That's right.
Yes, for an amazing award.
Yes, we are a finalist for Colorado Biz Magazine's Top Company in the hospitality and tourism category. So that's a huge honor for our team. And then also we found out we're finalists for the ICC Best Places to Work award as well. So that's I always say we have an amazing team, and I know a lot of people tout that as well, but when I look at the work that we are able to do and put together, and how little of it I feel like relies on me.
That's how it should be, though, right?
I really appreciate everything they do, and we get just some of the most amazing reviews from people online or emails to us, and when I get a chance to read those and see what a great job our team's doing and how much our clients really appreciate what we do, it just means the world to me. So
that is exciting stuff, and congratulations and
Thank you.
Best of luck to you on winning those awards.
We'll see. Well, we'll keep you posted.
Yeah, for sure. We'll be happy to share that out for you.
Good.
Yeah. So you have a fun guest in here today. Tell me all about him.
Yes, I am very excited. I've known Dean Isaacs for a number of years now and have a lot of respect for him. He is a true expert when it comes to the sales and marketing field, and helps companies not just here in Colorado but really all over the place, which is really cool. He had a chance to get to know him, and it's awesome to have you. So welcome, Dean.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. I appreciate you having me on the show. I'm looking forward to chatting with you today.
Yeah, it's going to be good. Well, we're going to dive right in. As I said, I really value your expertise when it comes to sales and marketing, and I know that's what you do at the with your company, the Vantage Group, and so talk a little bit about some of the mistakes that the companies make when it comes to their sales efforts.
Let's get into the nitty gritty.
That's great.
First question.
This is great. I love this stuff.
What bad things?
Right. So sales. It's an interesting thing. Most business owners understand how important, obviously, sales are. Right. Nothing happens until you sell something. Well,
lifeblood.
It is. However, if you sell something and you continue to lose money at the thing you're selling, you're not going to be successful. So I think one of the biggest mistakes that the clients that we work with and business owners in general have is they just keep trying to sell more, right? That's the solution. The more we sell, the more issues we cover up with revenue. But of course, you can drive yourself out of business if you don't have cash flow and profitability. So I think that's one. The other is our salespeople aren't working, right? We're just going to fire them all and start again. Just going to get rid of them. I can't deal with it anymore. They're not working out. I'm done with it. And they go out and they hire exactly the same type of people again. And then they wonder why, history repeats itself. Then really what it comes down to is the biggest issue is they don't have a plan. They don't have goals. They don't have a strategy. And so they're winging it. And maybe what worked for the business 5 or 10 years ago doesn't work today. Business has changed. Our buying demographic has changed. internet marketing, social media, all of that kind of thing has impacted selling, and businesses haven't evolved quickly enough. They've kind of looked at some new marketing channels, but they haven't thought about how sales has changed. So that's probably the biggest mistake, is just doing the old thing over and over again, expecting different results.
And trying to throw in a little Instagram just because that's what everybody's doing.
Yeah, my kids say Snapchat. Let's go on Snapchat. That's going to drive sales.
Of course it will.
Yeah. Maybe not so much. But, speak for a minute about the hiring piece, because, I want to get back to the plan, because I think that's really the integral focus.
Right.
But hiring is such a tough thing. I always say that overhiring a salesperson is probably the most difficult position to hire.
Yeah, it certainly can.
Why do you think that is, and how do you overcome that?
Yeah, well, salespeople are paid to interview, right? That's part of the selling process. They're out there, they're trying to represent their own personal brand effectively. They're trying to represent your company's brand effectively, and good salespeople do that well, right? There may be some other issues with their productivity, but nonetheless, they're trained to be good interviewers.
Yeah.
Right? And most interviewers aren't trained to be good interviewers. Like, a business owner has never probably got training on how to interview, how to ask the right questions, how to get below the surface and really understand the individual. So I think that's one aspect of hiring salespeople that makes it a challenge. The other is they don't really know what they need. Mm-hmm. All salespeople are salespeople, right? Everybody can go out and open new accounts. Everybody can develop and repeat business. Everybody can sell services or products the same way to the same markets. It's just not true.
Right.
There's as much specialty to sales as there is to any type of business. So not understanding that clearly, not knowing what you need, means you'll get whatever you get. So I think those are some of the mistakes that we see a lot.
I've definitely made those mistakes in the past. I remember years ago, early on in my career, catering, we're selling a pretty high-end, high-ticket item. And I made the mistake of hiring this person that was used to selling a subscription at $10, $15
Right.
a pop. So a pretty easy transactional thing. Wildly successful at it. And it's like, oh, this will translate. It'll be perfect. But had no concept how to sell a big-ticket item. And so I think that's spot on. It's, what are you selling? Are you selling cars or are you selling cell phones? Like,
Right, yeah.
There's a big difference.
And is there a long sales cycle, a short sales cycle? Do you really have influence over the buyer making a decision, or do you have to just kind of show up and show them information? Product versus service, price point, right? There's a lot of different nuances to sales that we have to think about when we hire the right person.
Mm-hmm. So talk more about the plan. I mean, I think, from our conversations, I know that's a central part of helping organizations and helping them improve their sales efforts. So talk a little bit about what that means and how companies can really focus on that.
Yeah. So the concept of a sales plan is one that I think is open to interpretation. When I ask some folks, show me your sales plan, they give me these financial projections, right? We want to hit $10 million in sales. Not sure how we're going to get there, but that's a goal. Well, that's not a plan. And so I think that the sales plan really starts out with a good business plan, a good business strategy, financial goals. So from an organizational perspective, having that clear vision of where we want to go, how we want to get there, and then all of the sub-plans under that, the marketing plan, the hiring plan, the retention and development plan, the sales plan, the product development plan, all of these things fit in as implementation tools for an overall strategy. And that's the piece that's missing, right? As I said earlier, just sell more stuff and we'll be successful. Obviously not a plan. So knowing where you want to go as an organization, I talk to a lot of business owners that have a vision to sell their business down the road. Well, that changes perhaps their revenue stream, their valuation. It may change the type of customers that we go after, right? Reoccurring revenue models in a business increase valuation. We know that. So can we evolve from the one and done situation to a reoccurring revenue model? That comes from the business strategy, not from the sales plan. The sales plan will support how do we get there. So I think that misnomer of what a sales plan is pretty common. And then you take the vision. So let's say we want to have this reoccurring revenue model. Okay, now we have to almost put our marketing hat on and say, what's our ideal client profile? What does that look like?
Right.
How do we connect with them? What's the journey they go through when they make a buying decision? And then you can backfill with the strategies around it and the tactics around it. But often that's completely overlooked.
Yeah, and it is just about throwing a number against the wall and saying, "Yep, that'll stick."
Yeah,
and I love what you said. When we were having a conversation a couple of days ago, and you said, great revenue, and good economy covers up a lot of bad business.
Yeah, kind of a rising tide raises all boats, right?
And it's so true that you know, you sell more and all of a sudden it gets very muddled, that water in terms of are you really being efficient? You know, what is your service level? If you're not relying on those clients for, you know, that repeat business and it's very transactional, then at some point that's going to erode. And it isn't just, you know, what you're spending to acquire that new sales. You could spend half that just trying to keep the sales that you have.
Right, and then the profitability of that piece of business goes away. Competition, right? That's a huge thing that changes. That can change your marketplace overnight. I was working with a software client a couple of years ago, and they were the biggest and baddest thing in the business for a long time. They were an innovator. They created a category that they worked within. Everybody thought of that brand. For 10 years. They grew and grew and grew. And they were a pretty good business, but they weren't a professionalized organization. They didn't have processes and systems, especially around marketing and sales. But they kept growing. Then all of a sudden, overnight, a young competitor came in with a shiny object, right? A new shiny tool, some innovation, and a lot of marketing. All of a sudden, their competitive advantage went away like that, and they didn't know how to react. And it took a while to turn that around. So it's amazing, right? Even in a good economy, things can change quickly.
Right. So talk a little bit about a couple of the other things that you think really differentiate companies that are really good at sales and focus on that and that you admire and respect.
Yeah. You know, we talk a lot about culture. I know that Footers Catering is that's the core of what you do, and I think that drives every aspect of the business. Operations, service delivery, sales and marketing is having a strong culture. And so what I find is that companies with good sales results have a plan, they have a strategy, and it's repeatable. You know, the 80-20 rule or even 90-10 rule in sales is pretty common. You get one or two salespeople that make most of the revenue, make most of the sales, and the rest don't. They kind of flounder, they come and go, it's a revolving door. And while we love to have those high performers, it's hard to replicate those people. And so we spend time with our clients trying to understand what makes that person so good at what they do. And it's not just, well, he knows the business or she has great client relationships. It's more than that. So if we can kind of unwind that DNA and then put a system together, a process together to find people that fit into that model and also can replicate the systems and processes and execute on a consistent basis, that then becomes a healthy sales organization. But when you're relying on one or two salespeople to drive your revenue and profitability, it's inevitable. At some point, they will leave. There's always a better deal. Grass is always greener at some point.
Yes, and if you haven't, you know, I loved what you said about taking, you know, what makes them great and not just slapping that, oh, it's because of who they are. And really understanding that. We talk about that a lot with Footers, more on an operational thing. You know, there's certain, you know, chefs that maybe our coordinators will want on an event, and I really want, you know, Ronnie on my event, or I really want Sam Bam on my event. It's like, okay, well, why? What is it? What are the things that he does that makes him stand out? And like, oh, well, he always does this, this, and this. It's like, okay, great. Well, we can probably train these three people over here to do that same thing. But if we don't know and we're just saying, oh, because he's got a great personality, you know, we're kind of up a creek on that.
Yeah, it's hard to repeat that. It's amazing. Likability, I think, is under-focused on in sales, right? People buy from people they like, trust, and you know, connect with. And some people are just more likable than others naturally, but I think there's some training around that. How do you connect and communicate with somebody? How do you ask the right questions? Empathy goes a long way in sales success, and likable people tend to be more empathetic, right? It's what are you going through as a buyer, not what do I want to sell you today. So that stuff can be trained, that can be focused on. That's part of the culture as well. So I think there's a lot of those intangibles that generate effective sales over a long period, profitable sales over a long period.
Yeah. So, you know, you alluded to a little bit just how much, you know, the market has changed. You know, talk specifically more about sales and what you've seen in terms of the sales process, how that's evolved over the past 5 years.
Yeah, it's you know, you ask me today, you ask me tomorrow, and it's probably changed, right? So there's
exponentially.
Oh yeah. So I think that there are a couple of things. I look at it from two sides. I try and look at it from the buyer's side first. How has the buyer's environment changed, and then how have we changed, or should we evolve from a seller's side? So from the buyer's side, fundamentally, I think if I boil it down, there are two primary things that have changed in the last decade and have accelerated in the last 5 years. The first is access to information, right?
Yeah.
We all grab our phone, we Google something, right? We can find information out about these products and services, suppliers, vendors, more quickly now than ever before. Because as a supplier, we want to be known. We want to have our information out there. So we put it all out there. Our pricing, our competition, our features, advantages, benefits, blah, blah, blah. So our buyers are more informed now than ever before. Along with that, IBM did a study a few years ago, and they looked at 1,600 different buyers of business products and services. So it's people in the B2B business buying products and services. And one of the things they came away with was, because of the access to information, buyers are typically between 70 and 80% of the way through their decision-making process before they even want to talk to a salesperson.
Wow.
I'm not surprised by that at all, actually.
We kind of do it ourselves in a way, right? We want to go research, we want to compare, we want to ask our friends and colleagues. And so the power's shifted, especially in the last 5 or 6 years. And that's one of the fundamental changes, is that a salesperson doesn't quite have that bag of tricks anymore, where they show up and explain and teach and coach, because the buyer's already probably 2 steps ahead of them. So that's a shift in power that's significant. I think the other thing is, for the first time in US history, we have 4 generations in the workforce.
Yes.
Boomers, Xers, Millennials, and Z generation, right? The Z Genners are in that 22, 23-year-old range, maybe 24. So 4 generations in the workforce. So let's say our typical buyer is a business owner, Gen Xer, let's say. So we're out there selling and marketing to Gen Xers. But what we don't realize is that Gen Xer has asked that Millennial or Z generation person to say, go out and find me 3 resources to answer this problem. So in actual fact, we may be selling to the Gen Xer, but we're marketing to a Z Gen, and they buy in a very different way. They look for stuff in a very different place. So we've got this complex, multi-generational workforce that most salespeople especially haven't even considered.
Talk a little bit more about the difference in how those generations buy, because I think that's a fascinating thing. That you're right. Most salespeople, it's not even on their radar. They're whatever generation they're in, they're stuck selling to that.
And many salespeople are sold to their generation. Right, that's where they grew up in sales, right? So it's a peer-to-peer sales relationship, and so you've got, I won't pick on boomers, I won't pick on Z Gen, I'll pick the 2 middle generations, right?
Oh, good, because nobody picks on millennials.
Right. Hey, I hear a lot. I don't buy into a lot of the things that people say about millennials. I tell you,
you and me both.
They've generated more innovation in the last 15 years than any other generation prior in a 15-year period. You can't even compare.
Yeah.
Are they perfect? No, but no generation is. Right, so I've got millennial kids. My kids are at that threshold between a Z Gen and millennial. They're 20 years old, so they're right in the middle there. So I could quite possibly be selling to my kids in the marketplace if they were an intern, which both of them were this summer, and they were told by the boss, go find a sales consultant to help us with this problem. I'm now selling to my kids, right? The way I speak, the way I interact, the way I deliver my story changes subconsciously. I don't even think about it. Right? On the other way around, if you've got a younger millennial selling to a boomer, could be his grandparent or her grandparent. It changes the dynamic. So I think that just that alone has shifted in how people perceive salespeople. A lot of times why we don't want to interact with salespeople, because you don't believe that salespeople bring value to the process.
Okay, yeah.
So generationally, each generation has their own uniquenesses about how they find information and where they buy information. But one thing that hasn't changed and never will is people buy things from other people. So that human connection, that way to use empathy and understand what's driving the buying decision, regardless of generation, that will never change. It's in our DNA as humans. And salespeople overlook that. They just want to push the features and benefits, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't resonate anymore.
Yeah. They can get features and benefits anywhere.
Yeah.
But
I can pull it up on my phone. 2 seconds, I already know.
And how much it's going to cost.
And who your competition is, and how you deliver your service, and everything else.
Yeah, that's fascinating when you think about that. You mentioned culture, and obviously that's something that is near and dear to my heart. Talk a little bit more about the impact that creating a great place to work has on sales.
Yeah, I always say that culture is the fuel in the rocket. Right? You could have the best Formula One racing car, to use a different analogy. But if you don't have the fuel, and you don't have a qualified driver, why do you have the car? So your business is the car. The fuel is the culture, and the driver are the people, right? So that's what culture is all about. So I think that good culture attracts like attracts like. And if you're vocal about it, you're proud of your culture, you've got a clearly defined vision for the company, not only will you attract good people, you'll attract customers that want to work with you as well. So just fundamentally, culture makes a huge U-turn in terms of the growth velocity of a company. I'm working with a small construction company right now, and they really want to grow. And that was why they engaged with our firm, is to help them grow. We're looking at sales and marketing and people and a bunch of different things. And one of the things I realized was they don't have a defined culture. Now, they have a culture, but it's not intentionally defined.
Yep.
And what we heard from their customers are, you know, some of their employees don't like to work there. They're hearing from the employees in the field, out there in the world. So obviously that was a major priority for us. We shifted some priorities and started focusing on culture with them, because you can't attract, you can't retain, you can't attract clients. It just, it's you're dead on the side of the road.
It's something that I think we didn't fully grasp when we started. And came, when we bought the business from my dad, it was very like, we want to create a great place to work, but it wasn't ever with that intention of this is going to be our ticket to grow. It was more, we just want it to be fun when we're at work. And we have seen that time and time again, where people say, your servers are amazing. They really care. They want to be there.
Yeah.
And yes, that's what we want. Like, we feel like when our team loves their job, we're just as excited about the events as our clients are. And that makes a big difference.
Well, and the phrase you just used, we wanted to create a great place to work, is different to creating a good culture, right? A great place to work. And again, we'll go back to generations. Again, don't want to pick on them, but from a boomer's perspective, a great place to work is stability, fair pay, it's 2 weeks off, and I'm probably going to try and retire there. Equals good place to work. That doesn't resonate with the Gen Xers, and definitely doesn't resonate with the millennials or the Z Gen. So that culture is different to a great place to work.
Yes.
They're not inseparable, and one culture drives a great place to work, but you can have a great place to work and no defined culture.
Yeah.
So it's a very different thing.
It's not necessarily just about the ping pong tables and the,
exactly,
the beer fridge.
Yeah, the kegerator.
Well, on that note, what do you think it takes to create a great place to work? Obviously it's different for each generation, but talk a little bit about the companies that you see that are doing it right.
Well, they're doing it intentionally, first of all, right? Sometimes things evolve over time, but doing it intentionally, I think, has a tremendous power. Being clear on the vision for the organization, where do we want this to go? Having a defined set of values, right? Values drive everything in a business. So just starting there can have a huge impact on creating the right kind of culture. And then also getting input from your employees. What is great culture to them? If you want to retain that key group of employees, they've got to have some say. They've got to have input and be communicated with and be part of growing the culture. So I think there are some processes you can go through to create culture. But even understanding what does culture mean within a business, just clearly defining that. The business owner I was mentioning earlier, he wasn't even clear on what is that? How do I even do that? I pay them fairly. They've got a job.
Isn't that culture?
Yeah. So there's a lot of education at the owner and leadership level, and then it trickles down through the organization.
Yeah, and it makes a huge difference. I honestly believe, especially moving forward, it's going to become even more important in the retention of talent and the quality of service that you're able to provide.
When you attract people that fit, and then it's just more fun.
It is much more fun. This is a fascinating conversation. I'm excited to come right back to it after this quick commercial break. Stay with us here on Connect and Collaborate. In the meantime, like and subscribe to our YouTube page while you're here. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Connect and Collaborate. I am Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and we have had Anthony Lambatos in studio with us today. He is with Footers Catering, and he always talks about creating a great place to work, and he brings some awesome guests with him. So let's jump right back in.
Yes, thank you, Alex. It's a pleasure to be here. We're having a great conversation, and along with us today, Dean Isaacs, the founder and president of the Vantage Group, and just do a phenomenal job working with their clients on sales and marketing, and helping them. Most of them, you're getting them to the next level, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of times the conversation is all around growth and sustainable growth. Yeah.
Yeah. Talk for a minute. We've jumped in on the sales, but I want to back up and talk about what you do specifically with some of your clients, and who are the right clients for you?
Yeah. Thanks for asking. So our clients tend to be B2B. So that's our commonality is B2B. We do a little work with B2C clients, but generally they're B2B, and they're across every industry, right? So professional services, technology, manufacturing, construction, you name it, we've worked with a company in that industry or something very close. And the fun thing about that is that we can bring ideas from one industry across boundaries to another industry. While it may be common in catering, it's not common in construction, whatever that it is. Right. So we have a lot of fun doing that. And really, as I said, while our fundamental blocking and tackling is around marketing and sales, helping a client develop a strategy, and then working with their team to implement that strategy, because if you have a good plan and you don't execute, you're not going to get results. So while marketing and sales are really important, and we work to integrate those two functions so they generate the results that they need, we also have a lot of conversations with business owners about their goals. Where are they going with their organization? Is there growth for an X period of time? Do they want to sell? What kind of valuation do they need? Where are they headed? Because if you don't have a clear vision of where the organization is going, we can't do our job in helping them achieve those growth goals. So as you can imagine, when we start talking about growth, we get a little outside of pure marketing and sales. We end up talking about people and culture, like we've been talking about today. And whether we do those things for the client or we bring in some of our strategic partners, we want to make sure the clients get the best advice so they can achieve their goals.
Yeah. So talk a little bit. We in the first segment we talked about sales.
Yeah.
Let's move into marketing. And marketing to me, I'm fascinated with, because I've heard it used so many different ways and applied to so many different things. I want to hear from you. What do you consider marketing?
Well, I'm sure that as soon as I say this, I'm going to be wrong, right? Because there's a definition out there that I've never heard. So fundamentally, I believe marketing is communicating who you are as a business to your target market. That's it. Right? At the most basic fundamental level, that's it. Now, it gets a lot more complicated from there, right? So every channel, every technology, every tactic is a subset of marketing. Digital marketing, PR, communications, trade shows, public speaking, direct mail, email, the list goes on and on. They're all pieces and parts of what I believe is a bigger piece of the organization called marketing. So that's fundamentally what marketing is. And for most small and mid-sized businesses, the kinds of businesses we work with, there has to be a tangible return on investment. We're not Procter & Gamble. We're just going to run an ad and see if it works. I think it was the EVP of Procter & Gamble probably a decade ago said, we spend, let's say, $100 million on marketing every year. We know 50% works. We just don't know which 50%.
Oh, no.
Right. Now, our small client, our business owners don't have that bandwidth, right? They can't spend $100,000 or $10,000 and not know where the return on investment is. So most of the businesses we work with, part of marketing, the return on investment is lead generation, supporting the sales effort. And that's the intersection a lot of times between marketing and sales. And we've talked a little about this. No longer is it marketing does their stuff, black box, who knows, and they get a lead and they throw it over the fence to sales. It's like, all right, Anthony, you're our sales guy, go close that deal. Things shouldn't happen and don't happen in a silo anymore, especially from the buyer's perspective. A lot of business owners and business leaders still run their organizations in silos. From the buyer's perspective, they want a seamless transition. They just want to know they're working with the people at the organization. And I don't want to hear from a buyer, if I'm the buyer, I don't want to hear, well, I can't help you there, but let me send you to the call center and they'll figure it out. That's not what you want to hear.
Deal killer right there.
Yeah, is that the culture you want to communicate to the marketplace? So lead generation is a really important output to marketing in small and mid-sized businesses. It's not the only thing, but I think that when we speak to business owners about what do you expect out of marketing, they're either very clear, and it's something like lead generation, or it's I don't know. We just need to get our word out there. We need to get our brand out there. So there's a lot of vaguity around that, and you can't measure vague.
Yeah.
Right? You got to be specific.
Put it on a billboard.
Yeah. Back of the milk carton. Or
Get
something.
it out there.
Yeah.
Well, talk a little bit about that. I love that analogy of throwing the black box over the fence and saying, "Here, you take it now." What are the other steps companies need to do to integrate that marketing and sales process? How do you break down those silos that have traditionally been there in your marketing, your sales?
Yeah.
What needs to happen for them to really be talking and working together?
I think there needs to be common ground, right? So one common example I use is the term lead. You ask a marketing person what a lead is, even what a good or a qualified lead is, and it's going to be a very different description to the salesperson. So common ground, common language is important. Common goals. If a marketing person is just paid on a base salary and that's it, they've got some goals to achieve, but there's no upside, there's no incentive for really understanding what the sales process looks like, they may not do that. Salespeople are typically paid on production. Marketing people aren't always paid on production. So there's a diverging vision and goal there, and outcomes aren't the same. Mm-hmm. So common ground is really important. And I think one of the ways to get there is use the buyer as our connecting point. So understand the journey a buyer goes through when they, first of all, define they have a problem, right? When we only buy something, either when we really want it, if it's personally, but in a business, let's assume there's a problem they're trying to solve. How do they recognize that problem? And then how do they go out and try and understand what solutions are available? What vendors can provide those solutions? What's their decision-making criteria? What's the journey that they go through from problem discovery to making a buying decision? If you map that out from the buyer's perspective, it's what I call the buyer's journey, all of a sudden this marketing and sales alignment comes into vision because we know what we've got to say, when we've got to say it, and how those things intersect.
Yeah. I'm going to go back and put my marketing department on a comp plan that reflects sales now.
Yeah. It's a little controversial, right?
But I think it's a great point. Are the goals aligned, and do they understand? Your question, what is a good lead? Yeah. Marketing might have a different idea of what's a good lead compared to sales. Yeah. And if they're not talking, you're right. That's the whole thing's going to fall apart. I'm bringing you all these leads. What's happening? And they're sitting there saying, those aren't good leads.
They are good leads. So what happens is, typically, salesperson won't even work the lead. They'll just say, I'm not going to waste any time on that.
I know they're not going to buy.
I'm not there. Yeah, it's going to be a waste of time. So I'm going to go out and create my own leads. So they're out prospecting, cold calling, whatever they're doing. Yeah. So marketing's doing what they're doing with no impact on the organization, no positive impact on the organization. And maybe it's no fault of their own. Sales is going off doing their own thing. So you've got these two silos pointing fingers at each other. And quite honestly, it's a leadership problem.
Yeah.
It's a strategy problem, and it's a communication problem. And if you bring salespeople into a marketing communications conversation, and you bring a marketing person into a sales conversation, they get to be a little bit empathetic. There it is, right? We talked about empathy before. And all of a sudden it aligns vision.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about some of the mistakes. We talked about sales mistakes. Talk about some of the marketing mistakes that people make.
People try too many things. Too many things at one time for not long enough or too long. And they don't measure the results. Too many things. There are so many opportunities to market your brand and your business, online and offline.
Yeah.
There's just an infinite number of options. And so if you're an organization that's lucky enough to have a marketing person, they probably have some biases and some specialties, and they're going to drive you in that direction, right or wrong. But if you're an organization that's a little smaller and you don't have a marketing specialist and you're not using an outside advisor, then it's like, where do we go? Right?
Yeah.
We've got to be on LinkedIn. We've got to use Navigator to find leads on LinkedIn. No, we've got to do digital marketing. I heard about this thing called sales automation. How do I do that? And they get scattered everywhere. So my recommendation is you've heard me say this over and over, have a plan.
Yeah.
Know what your outcomes and goals are and back into it.
So I'm guessing, you said they don't try for long enough. My gut tells me that depends a lot on the sales cycle.
Right.
But is there a percentage or a relationship that ties that together, that you can give people almost hey, you really should try that for 3 months or 2 months. What is the right number?
Yeah, well, I don't know if there's an absolute right number, but certainly a lot of these digital marketing tools, that's where a lot of folks are headed, SEO and paid search and all that kind of stuff. You've got to give it 90 days, right? You've got to give it 90 days to capture Google's attention if you're starting to do some kind of an SEO campaign. But I recommend to clients, don't sign up for a year. Right? If the provider's not willing to let you sign up for 3-month chunks, for example, then maybe they're not the relationship that you want. So give it 3 months, be realistic about the expectations, right? And measure along the way. Don't let that vendor or that supplier or that provider go silent for 90 days and they just show up with the report and say, here we are. It's too late. Part of my marketing is getting constant feedback. I said in an event I was speaking at this morning, if you do something in marketing that you can't measure, you shouldn't do it. Everything's measurable.
Yes.
And it's measurable instantly, especially if it's online, digital.
Right.
So don't wait.
Well, your point they try too many things at once, because I think there are things that can be difficult to track with marketing. I know I've struggled with that before. So isolating and saying, hey, we're going to try this, and we know that anything that comes in has got to be funneled through that,
right.
and we know that either works or doesn't work.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a great tip for people to think about, because it can be so overwhelming. Like, do I do a little bit of this, a little bit, and you end up dipping your toe in the water in 20 different places, and how could you know if it works?
And you're not even really trying to measure, right? You're trying to connect the dots with that data. There's some really great services out there. There's one service called CallRail, and they're a company that provides you an infinite number of phone numbers. They're dynamic phone numbers, so you can have a different phone number for every campaign that you run. Direct mail, email, online, landing page, I don't care what it is, a billboard. You can create a different phone number for every campaign. So anytime somebody dials that unique number, it was a lead generated by that campaign. They all can come into the same place. You don't have to have 50 people in a call center. So that alone, having dynamic landing pages based on your campaigns, coupon codes, and there's a lot of really great tools that allow us to adapt what we've been doing and have more trackable information.
Yeah, the great advice. Make sure you're tracking everything you're doing when it comes to marketing. I know from now on that's going to be something we're going to make sure that's great. We're going to do as well. So communication is something that is a buzzword. That and innovation, I feel like are thrown around all the time. And I know that's something that you've studied a lot and you know a lot about. Talk a little bit about the impact of communication when you're trying to implement these plans. You come up with a sales plan, you integrate it with marketing. How do you communicate it to both, internal, your team, and then external, the potential clients?
Right. Well, certainly effective communication is critical to success. I won't just say communication, because there are some that they communicate but not effectively. So certainly effective communication. And what do I mean by effective communication? You've effectively developed a message that when the person that you're delivering it to understands the meaning, right? That's what it's about. It's the meaning. It's not the language, it's the meaning. So all good strategy is driven because of change, right? It's not a new strategy. It's not a new direction if you're not changing something. And so change is difficult. Human nature is we don't like change. Don't move my cheese. So that communication is important, and it's communication throughout the process. Here's where we're going and why. The why is so important. Getting buy-in and feedback as you build out the strategy, because then that leads to buy-in and a successful implementation. If you rely on your team to execute, it's one thing to say, all right, there's the plan, go do it, tell me how it goes. Are people going to do it? Perhaps. At the level they could? Definitely not. But if they were part of the process, part of the communication loop, the buy-in's significantly higher, and they probably provided some valuable information along the way, and they're willing to execute. And it comes back to that culture thing too. Part of culture and being intentional about evolving your culture, a lot of it is around communication too.
Well, and it gives people opportunities to grow. I mean, when you involve them in that process, I love it. The buy-in is huge. They were part of that, but then the satisfaction they get from being part of it as well makes them much more proud to implement. And that I've seen at Footers a number of times just really take off, where they're all of a sudden leading the charge instead of me or somebody else. They're hell-bent on making sure this thing gets done.
It kind of takes on a life of its own, right?
Yes, exactly. So external messaging and communication. What are the things that the companies need to focus on when it comes to how they get? We've got this plan. Here's what we need. Here's what we're going to do. We got to tell people about it. Talk more about that.
Yeah, so external communication can be a lot of different things. So we have some great partners that we know in town that are PR and communications experts, right? So they'll go in and they'll teach an executive team how to react to an emergency or a situation. So they communicate to the marketplace. So they say the right thing. That's probably not the communication we're talking about. If your employees are clear on their vision, and it aligns with the culture of the organization, they're going to talk about it. Employees talk in the field, in the marketplace. They tell their friends, their family, their colleagues, if this is a good place to work or if this isn't a good place to work, if they like the direction of the company or not. So if everybody's got buy-in, everybody's clear and excited, you haven't got to worry about it. Now, having said that, there's a little coaching along the way too, right? So I believe that with all good intentions, sometimes the wrong things are said. So you can certainly train your customer-facing people on the right kind of language to use. And that language aligns with the culture and brand of your organization. So then there's consistency in the marketplace. Footers Catering is a great example. You have catchphrases and acronyms that are just your stuff. And when I hear that, I know it's Anthony and Footers Catering. It's no question. It extends the brand into the marketplace. So, but you've been intentional about that. So that's the message, is being intentional, making sure that your employees develop the right skill set to be able to communicate.
I think another lesson that we've learned on the way is the frequency. I think it was a mistake I made early on, that I felt like if you tell somebody something once, they should understand it and get it, and we're good.
I got it first time. Why didn't you? Right?
Exactly. And the number of times I realized, I'm like, no, like we have to talk about this over and over and over again, and then talk about it some more, and then next week we're going to talk about it some more. And it's something for us. I totally underestimated early on of the importance of that we're bombarded with so much information and so many words and messages that come in on a daily basis. To think that the one time I tell our team this one thing, that everybody's going to receive it in the exact same way and understand it, kind of is silly when you take a step back and what were you thinking, Anthony? And so for us, the communication piece has really been back to the culture. That's our key focus. How are we talking about that each week? Every week we have a meeting on Tuesday. We're giving out our Jimmy Bucks that recognize who embodied our core values for that week. We're reading our reviews, talking about why that served the third part of our mission statement, creating exceptional experiences for our clients and their guests. In that vision that we have for the company, we're talking about that often with our team. So I think
it's intentional, right?
Yes,
it's intentional. And I think that another thing that drives that is consistency as well. Consistency in language. You could talk about values, and every time you bring it up, you use different language. You talk about it in a different way, and it becomes confusing and inconsistent. So that consistency is really, really important, along with the frequency, right? Even from a marketing perspective, right, we have to get our brand in the marketplace X number of times before people connect your brand with the value you bring. It's no different. It's humans connecting with humans. So consistency and frequency is really important.
But yeah, for creating that, fostering a culture that has great communication. I think you're spot on with that. We've struggled with the values as well. Originally we had, we still do 9 different words that are our values. And we had to go to great lengths to define what that meant, because balance to me might mean something completely different to you. And so talking about, here's what balance means at Footers. It's not 9 to 5, because we work a lot of weekends and a lot of late nights. It's not Saturday and Sundays off. Balance to us is that, a flexible work schedule. So that is something that we can accommodate. But it took us a little while to learn how to really define those and be consistent when we talked about, balance. This is what it means as a core value.
When you hear the language of Footers repeated without you in the room, You kind of overhear a conversation, then you know, all right, it's starting to stick, it's starting to resonate, and your employees are going to repeat that to other employees. They're going to make sure that new employees understand, because it impacts their quality of life, and they're going to say it out in the field. They're going to say it out with your clients and customers. That's when you know, all right, all this hard work is starting to pay off.
You're spot on there. That's I couldn't have said it better. The middle part of our mission statement is make it better every day, and our team made it into an acronym MIBE for those four letters, and so then it became MIBE Tribe, and you'd walk around and people, oh, that's a good MIBE, and oh, you're MIBing that. That's awesome.
It's a verb.
And all of a sudden, it was an adjective, it was a verb, it was all over the place. It's like everybody's using MIBE Tribe, and now every meeting ends with MIBE Tribe on 3.
That's
and
awesome.
It's a story that April and I aren't the ones telling that story. It's our team that loves it and embraces it and talks to all new employees about like MIBE Tribe. This is what it means, and this is what you got to do. And this is
we got to get it out. It's kind of like Google was, 15 years ago. What, Google? Now it is a verb, right? You Google something. Right. It's common language. You need to get the footers language out there into the world, man.
That's right. Look out, MIBing. It's coming. Talk on the flip side about why you see companies struggle with communication. We talked about things they do right and things to fix it, but what are the mistakes they make?
I mentioned leadership earlier, and I think sometimes leaders just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Too much like hard work. It's change. It's uncomfortable. I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And I think that often is a roadblock before it even gets started, right? Maybe talked about it during our strategic planning. We've got to improve communication. And it never goes anywhere.
Yes.
We send out a monthly email to our employees. That's not it, right? That's not the answer to the solution. So I do think that that's part of it. And communication's at a lot of different levels. So if we're talking kind of employees feeling open to speak to their boss or a peer, airing some concerns, just getting something off their chest, if there's repercussions to that, even if it's kind of just a little under the surface, that erodes the whole concept of open communication.
Right.
And then territorialism.
Just because you have your door open doesn't mean that
it's
somebody's willing to walk in.
I'm sitting here like this, ignoring the fact that you're standing right there. I think territorialism is another thing that impacts communication, right?
Interesting.
If I deliver my results, nobody really knows how I do it, but I deliver, I'm now someone that the company can never get rid of. The question is that the truth or not? You actually become less valuable to the company because you're not repeatable, you can't grow. And so that territorialism often drives a lack of communication too.
Do you think that's something that's evolving now in the workplace? It's something that existed a lot more maybe 10, 15 years ago and is being phased out now, or is that still a main issue?
I think it's still there at some level, but I do think it's changing. I think that folks coming into the workforce today and in the last 15 or so years, they've lived their life in a public domain, right? On Facebook, on Twitter, and they used to just communicating freely. And you know what? There's always the haters out there, right? But they kind of get on with it. And so sometimes I feel like there's a tolerance for risk that's higher than the prior generation, right? So I think that may be part of it, generationally certainly. But the other thing is that employees now aren't afraid to look for the next best thing.
Yes.
Right? Well, I don't care if I've got 5 jobs in 10 years. Who cares? I've elevated my career. I've learned new things. I've had fun. 20 years ago, not the case. So they want to be more kind of controlled.
Yeah. Well, this has been awesome. Thank you for joining us, Dean. I could continue the conversation, but we've got to wrap up. Where can people find you or get a hold of you?
If you just Google Vantage Group Denver, you'll find me online. You can look for my name, Dean Isaacs, on all the social platforms. I'm out there. I'm easy to find.
Good. Well, thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, gentlemen. It was a pleasure having you on, Dean. And as always, Anthony, we love having you on, and we'll see you next month as well.
We'll be back.
Yes, absolutely. Hopefully with a couple of awards, right?
I hope so.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much. It's been a lovely day here on Connect and Collaborate. Like and subscribe our YouTube page. Check out our radio page at cobrt.com. Thank you so much.